My wife cheated and called me a whiny bore. I unleashed brutal revenge. Ended her career, friendships, and finances. Her life crumbled. Hey Reddit, I'm usually just a lurker here, soaking up all the crazy stories. Never thought I'd be posting one of my own, but here we are. My life just imploded, and I need to get this out. I'm Mark, 38, married to Sarah, 37, for 10 years. We have no kids, which, honestly, feels like a messed up blessing right now. Our marriage wasn't perfect, whose is? But I genuinely thought we had a solid foundation, a partnership. We built a life, a home, shared dreams. Or so I thought. Things started changing about 6 months ago when Sarah got this big promotion at her marketing firm. New title, more responsibility, a significant bump in pay. At first, I was ecstatic for her. She worked hard, she deserved it. But then the new job glow started to morph into something else. She was always working late. Networking events became a nightly fixture. Her phone was practically surgically attached to her hand, screen always angled away from me. She started spending a lot more time on her appearance. New clothes, frequent salon visits, a gym membership she suddenly had to have. I brushed it off, told myself she was just embracing her new professional persona. Good for her. I thought, she's feeling confident. Man, was I a naive idiot. I tried to be supportive, made her dinner for when she eventually got home, tried to engage in conversation about her day. She'd give me clipped answers, a dismissive wave of her hand, saying she was too tired or too stressed to talk about it. Our intimacy, which was never super frequent but always there, basically evaporated. She'd claim headaches, stress, fatigue. Every single time. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to guess what mood she'd be in. It felt like I was living with a stranger, a more glamorous, more distant stranger. The red flags were there, waving like a giant carnival banner, but I was so deep in denial, so invested in our story, I just couldn't see them. The turning point, the moment my carefully constructed world shattered, happened about a month ago. It was a Tuesday, I remember it vividly. Sarah had said she was on a business trip to Austin for 3 days, a big client pitch she'd been stressing over. I was home alone, feeling a mix of lonely and actually kind of relieved not to be tiptoeing around her. I decided to do some much-needed tidying up around the house, including her side of the bedroom. She's notoriously messy, always leaving clothes strewn about. I picked up a blazer she'd worn a few days before, one of her new, expensive ones, to hang it back in the closet. As I did, a small, folded piece of paper slipped out of the pocket and landed on the floor. It wasn't a receipt or a business card, which would have been normal. It was a handwritten note, folded neatly, with a very distinct cologne smell clinging to it. Definitely not mine, and not any of her usual work colleagues. My heart immediately started doing this weird, frantic flutter. Call it gut instinct, call it dread, but I knew, instantly, something was very, very wrong. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. It was short, only a few lines, but it hit me like a physical punch. Can't wait for our private Austin pitch. You looked incredible tonight, love. J. The J was scrawled at the bottom, followed by a couple of XS, love. Private pitch. Austin. It all clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening thud. This wasn't a business trip. This was a romantic getaway. With someone else. My blood went cold, then boiling hot. The world started to spin. I sat down hard on the bed, staring at that damn note, feeling like I couldn't breathe. My wife, Sarah, the woman I married, was in Austin right now, pitching with some guy named Jay. The denial, the naive idiocy, it all just evaporated, leaving behind a searing, agonizing emptiness. My mind went into overdrive. I felt like I was in a bad movie. I immediately went for her laptop, which she usually kept locked down tighter than Fort Knox. But in her haste, or maybe just carelessness, it was open, sitting on her nightstand. My hands were still shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I don't know why, but I went straight for her emails. Call it a desperate need for confirmation, or just pure, unadulterated rage guiding my fingers. And there it was. A whole separate email account I never knew about, logged in, sitting right there. It was like she wanted me to find it, or was just so arrogant in her deception. The inbox was full of messages. Not from clients, not from colleagues. From Javier. Pet names, suggestive subject lines, plans for their Austin trip, the very one she was supposedly on for work. Photos. Oh God, the photos. Selfies of them together, looking way too cozy, way too intimate. One of them, a picture of Sarah in a bikini I'd bought her for our honeymoon, but posing with him, laughing, her arm around his waist, his hand on her hip. Then I saw a text conversation open on her desktop. It was from a few days ago, right after I'd gently suggested we try to reconnect, maybe have a date night. Her response to me had been, "So sorry, babe, just swamped with work, totally exhausted." Her response to Javier, "My husband is being such a whiny bore again. Can't wait to be rid of him and just be with you. 2 more days." It wasn't just physical cheating, it was emotional, it was contemptuous. The venom in that text. Whiny bore. Can't wait to be rid of him. It wasn't just that she was cheating, it was that she was actively despising me while doing it, laughing at me behind my back, wishing for my absence. My stomach clenched, and I felt a wave of nausea so strong I thought I was going to throw up. The betrayal was so much deeper, so much colder than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a calculated, deliberate, brutal act of disrespect. The world truly did just go black for a second. I spent the next 2 days in a blur of shock and disbelief, feeling like I was floating outside my own body. The anger was a slow burn, simmering under the surface, but mostly I just felt this profound, bone-deep sadness. I didn't eat, barely slept, just replayed every single interaction, every excuse, every lie, every distant glance from the last 6 months, seeing them all in a new, sickening light. My brain felt fried, like it couldn't process the sheer volume of betrayal. I felt like a fool, a complete and utter idiot for not seeing what was so blatantly obvious. When Sarah finally walked through the door late Wednesday evening, smiling, tanned, and looking annoyingly refreshed, I was sitting on the couch, laptop open to her email account, the damning photos and texts plastered across the screen. I didn't say a word, just stared at her, my face probably ashen. Her smile faltered. Her eyes flickered to the laptop, then back to me, and the color drained from her face. "Mark? What? What's going on?" She stammered, trying to sound innocent, but her voice was tight with panic. I just pointed at the screen. "Austin, huh? Big client pitch." My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, which honestly scared even me. She walked over, slowly, cautiously, and looked at the screen. Her eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth with her hand. "Mark, I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, my voice still unnervingly calm. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty damn clear. Whiny bore? Can't wait to be rid of him." I quoted her own words back to her and watched her flinch. Then came the torrent of excuses, the frantic backpedaling. "It's not what you think. He's just a colleague. We were celebrating a successful pitch. The love part was just a joke, an inside thing. The photos are innocent. We were just having fun." She was practically hyperventilating. It was disgusting. The sheer audacity of her lies, even now, when presented with undeniable proof, was breathtaking. She even tried to cry, but no tears came, just this pathetic, choked-up sound. I just sat there, listening to her pathetic attempts to salvage her image, feeling nothing but a profound sense of disgust. It was like watching a bad actor try to pull off an impossible scene. It was all a performance, a desperate attempt to manipulate, just like everything else. I need to take a break from typing. My hands are shaking too much again. But before I do, can I ask for a quick favor? If you're finding this story compelling, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and giving this video a like. It really helps me out. Thanks. I watched her performance, this pathetic, desperate flurry of lies, and felt something inside me just snap. The sadness, the disbelief, the hurt. It was all suddenly overshadowed by a cold, searing rage. It wasn't the kind of rage where I wanted to yell or smash things. It was a quiet, dangerous kind of anger that settled deep in my bones. "Stop," I said, my voice cutting through her panicked babbling. It was still quiet, but it had an edge that made her stop short, her mouth hanging open. "Just stop. You're making it worse." She stared at me, eyes wide, seeing something in my face, I think, that she hadn't seen before. The mask of calm I was wearing must have been terrifying. "I know everything, Sarah," I continued, each word delivered with icy precision. "The notes, the emails, the texts, the other account. The Austin pitch was just the tip of the iceberg, wasn't it? Whiny bore. That's what you think of me. The man who dedicated 10 years of his life to you, who stood by you, who cheered you on, who thought he was building a life with you. She tried to reach for me, her hand outstretched. Mark, please, it was a mistake. I swear, I don't know why I did it. I was stressed, lonely, he just flattered me. It didn't mean anything. The tears finally started, real ones this time, but they felt hollow, performative. Too little, too late. It meant you were laughing at me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It meant you despised me enough to degrade me in front of your lover. It meant you systematically lied to my face every single day while planning your little trysts and calling them work. It meant you took everything we had and pissed all over it. I stood up slowly, the laptop still open on the couch. I felt a strange sense of clarity, a cold resolve settling over me. There was no going back from this. No fixing it. Her excuses, her crocodile tears, they were just more insults, more attempts to make me doubt my own reality. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was gone, replaced by this cruel, calculating stranger. The emotional impact was a gut punch, turning my insides to ice. The trust was obliterated, replaced by a festering wound of betrayal and contempt. The next few days were a blur of cold silence and sharp edges. Sarah tried to talk, to apologize, to cry, but I just couldn't look at her, let alone listen. Her words were empty, devoid of any genuine remorse, just a desperate attempt to manipulate the situation back in her favor. I moved into the guest bedroom, effectively putting a wall between us. The house, once our shared sanctuary, now felt like a battleground, thick with unspoken accusations and bitter recriminations. Every creak of the floorboards, every whispered attempt at conversation from her, grated on my nerves. I started doing things methodically, almost robotically. I called a lawyer just to understand my options. The conversation was surreal, like it was happening to someone else. I changed all the passwords to our joint accounts, not out of spite, but out of a sudden, terrifying realization that I knew absolutely nothing about the woman I shared my life with. I had to protect myself. The emotional impact was a constant, dull ache in my chest, punctuated by sharp stabs of anger and nausea. I felt hollowed out, empty. The future I had envisioned, the shared retirement plans, the quiet evenings, the silly inside jokes, it all vanished in an instant, replaced by a vast, terrifying emptiness. It wasn't just the loss of a wife, it was the loss of a life, a carefully constructed identity. Who was I without Sarah's husband? I didn't know. The weight of it all was crushing, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. I just existed, drifting through the days, fueled by stale coffee and a burning sense of injustice. The betrayal wasn't just a moment. It was a poison seeping into every memory, every shared experience, tainting everything we had ever built. It was a complete and utter annihilation of my past and present. During those surreal days, a profound shift happened within me. The initial shock gave way to a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just sad, I was furious. But it wasn't a destructive, emotional fury. It was calculated. I started thinking about everything she had said, every lie, every sneer about me to Javier. Whiny bore, can't wait to be rid of him. It wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage. It was a total disrespect for me as a person. And that, I decided, was something I wouldn't let slide. One evening, after another pathetic attempt from Sarah to talk things through, which mostly involved her blaming me for being distant and not meeting her needs, I realized something. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was only sorry she got caught. Her apologies were empty, manipulative. She wanted to sweep it under the rug, to pretend that her feelings were the priority, that her mistake should be forgiven. That night, lying awake in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling, a plan began to form in my mind. It started small, a flicker of an idea. Then it grew, fed by every remembered slight, every lie, every image of her with Javier. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to be the whiny bore she thought I was. I was going to make her understand the depth of her actions, not through words, but through consequences. Brutal, undeniable consequences. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. This was about justice. My justice. And I knew, with absolute clarity that I wouldn't stop until I felt that sense of balance restored. My blood ran cold, but my mind was clear. The gloves were off. The first move was strategic, not emotional. I needed to hit her where it hurt, and for Sarah, that was her image, her perceived success, and her financial stability. The very thing she flaunted with her new promotion and her glamorous life with Javier. I spent hours gathering all the evidence I had. The love note, the emails, the texts, the photos. I made copies, backed everything up. I wasn't just planning a separation. I was planning a systematic dismantling. I knew Sarah's boss, Mr. Henderson, socially. Our companies had worked on a few projects together over the years, and I'd run into him at corporate events. I scheduled a private meeting with him under the pretense of discussing a potential collaboration. He was friendly, unsuspecting. I walked into his office, sat down, and without preamble, laid out the evidence. The photos of Sarah and Javier in Austin during her business trip, smiling, arm in arm. The texts where she badmouthed company events and clients to Javier, calling them boring wastes of time that she had to endure before escaping to him. Henderson's face went from friendly curiosity to utter shock, then to a furious shade of red. He's a stickler for professional conduct and client relationships. Sarah's casual disregard for both, combined with her blatant use of company time and resources for an affair, was a massive breach of trust and policy. I didn't have to say much. He just kept staring at the screen, his jaw clenching. I handed him a discreetly compiled folder with printouts. I thought you should be aware of how Sarah has been conducting herself, particularly regarding her recent business trip and her interactions with clients and colleagues. I said, my voice calm and even. I watched the realization dawn on his face. The consequences for her at work would be swift and severe. This was just the beginning. The brutal revenge had begun. Within 24 hours, the first domino fell. Sarah came home from work, utterly distraught, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. Her eyes were red and puffy, her usually immaculate hair a mess. She burst into the house, slamming the door, and found me in the kitchen, calmly making myself a sandwich. You absolute monster. She shrieked, her voice hoarse with rage and humiliation. What did you do? I took a bite of my sandwich. Did what? I just shared some information with your boss, Sarah. Information you so carelessly left lying around for me to find. I've been suspended, she cried, collapsing onto a kitchen chair, burying her face in her hands. Under investigation. He saw everything. He said I violated every code of conduct, that I used company funds for personal gain, that I slandered clients. My career is over, Mark. Over. I just looked at her, chewing slowly. Funny. That's kind of how I felt when I found out you were screwing some random guy in Austin, calling me a whiny bore, and wishing you could be rid of me. Except, my career isn't over. My life just changed. She lifted her head, her face blotchy, streaked with tears and mascara. How could you be so cruel? So vindictive? Cruel? I almost laughed. You think this is cruel? You shredded my heart, Sarah. You took a decade of my life, 10 years of loyalty and trust, and flushed it down the toilet. You didn't just cheat, you despised me. And now you're finally seeing a glimpse of the consequences of that contempt. She started sobbing uncontrollably, but I felt nothing. No pity, no remorse. Just a grim satisfaction. This was the first taste of her own medicine, and it was sweet. Her high-flying career, the very thing that had apparently made her feel entitled to treat me like dirt, was crumbling. And I was just getting started. I just wanted to remind everyone quickly, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and give this video a like. Your support means a lot. The fallout at her job was swift and brutal, just as I'd anticipated. A week later, she received a formal letter of termination. Not only was she fired for gross misconduct and misuse of company resources, but there were whispers of legal action from the firm regarding damages to their reputation due to the client slander she'd been texting about. Her carefully cultivated professional image, the one she'd worked so hard to build, was utterly destroyed. It was exhilarating, in a dark, twisted way, to watch her world unravel. But it wasn't enough. Not for the whiny bore. I still had a few aces up my sleeve. Sarah's social circle, which she had meticulously curated over the years, was full of people who admired her for her ambition and success. Many were mutual friends from our early days, but she had largely sidelined me as she climbed the corporate ladder. Now, it was time for them to see the real Sarah. I started dropping hints, carefully constructed narratives, to those mutual friends. Sarah's been under a lot of stress lately. She's really struggling. Did you hear about what happened with her job? So unfortunate, especially given the circumstances. I let the rumors spread organically, knowing that with a little nudge, people would start asking questions. And when they did, I had a digital package ready for them. A concerned friend who just happened to send anonymous screenshots of the damning texts, the love note, the Austin photos, to her closest friends and acquaintances. Nothing overtly from me, but everyone knew where the information originated. The betrayal to her image, her carefully crafted persona, was now public, within her most intimate circles. The walls were closing in, and her perfectly curated life was crumbling around her. The social fallout was a spectacle. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts, not from Sarah, but from mutual friends. Some were genuinely shocked and sympathetic to me. Others were just curious, wanting details. I kept my responses vague but factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. Sarah's carefully constructed network of friends began to fray. Dinner invitations stopped. Group chats went silent when she posted. Her calls went unanswered. The whispers, which I had carefully orchestrated, turned into outright avoidance. Her friends, who valued success and appearances above all else, quickly distanced themselves from her disgraced persona. The contempt she'd shown me, the blatant disregard for our shared life, was now being reflected back at her through the loss of her social standing. It wasn't just losing her job, it was losing her identity, the very person she presented herself to be. She was no longer the glamorous, successful marketing executive. She was the cheating, lying, disgraced ex-wife. I felt a strange, cold satisfaction. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. More like a grim sense of equilibrium. She had wanted to be rid of the whiny bore. Well, now she was rid of everything that made her life valuable, everything she used to prop up her inflated ego. I watched her flounder, her attempts to explain away the misunderstanding falling on deaf ears. The lies she told to cover her tracks only dug her deeper. It was a brutal, public dismantling of her world, piece by agonizing piece. And with each piece that fell, I felt a little bit more of the crushing weight of betrayal lift from my shoulders. The ice in my veins was slowly, painstakingly, beginning to melt, replaced by a quiet, determined resolve for my own future. The next phase was financial. Sarah had always been proud of her independent wealth, often subtly reminding me that her big promotion meant she was the primary breadwinner. I, however, had always been the meticulous one with the finances, managing our investments and joint accounts. While she was busy globetrotting with Javier, I was quietly moving assets into separate accounts, preparing for the inevitable. Not illegally, not unethically, but strategically. Our prenuptial agreement, which she had initially scoffed at but signed anyway, was ironclad. It clearly outlined the division of assets in case of infidelity, a clause I had insisted on, and which she had dismissed with a laugh, saying, "Like I'd ever cheat, Mark." Oh, the irony. I filed for divorce, serving her with the papers personally. Her face when she saw them was priceless, a mixture of shock, fury, and dawning dread. The papers weren't just a petition for divorce. They were a detailed inventory of her financial recklessness, her misuse of joint funds for her affair. I'd tracked the credit card statements, and the invocation of the infidelity clause. "You can't do this," she screamed, crumpling the papers. "We have a life together, a house, our savings." "Our savings, Sarah, that I managed and grew, while you were busy spending on your little adventures," I retorted, calm as ever. "And as for the house, the prenuptial agreement is quite clear. In the event of infidelity, the cheating party forfeits their claim to the marital home and certain shared assets. Remember that clause you laughed off?" Her face went pale. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. No job, no social circle, and now, thanks to her own brutal choices, no financial security. The house, our beautiful home, the symbol of our shared dreams, would be mine. She would walk away with barely anything beyond her personal effects and a small portion of her own separate assets. The brutal revenge had reached its financial crescendo. The whiny bore was dismantling her life brick by brutal brick. The divorce proceedings were messy, as expected. Sarah fought dirty, trying to smear my name, claiming I was abusive, controlling, anything she could think of to gain leverage. But my lawyer was prepared, armed with a mountain of evidence. The notes, the emails, the texts, the detailed financial records showing her spending. Every lie she told was met with undeniable proof. The infidelity clause in our prenup held up like a fortress. During one particularly nasty court session, she lost it. She pointed at me across the courtroom, her voice raw with hatred. "He's a monster. He's destroyed my life, my career, my friends, everything." My lawyer calmly presented the evidence of her affair, the contemptuous texts, the financial misuse. The judge, a stoic woman who had seen it all, just looked at Sarah with a weary expression. "Ms. Davies," she said, her voice firm, "Mr. Miller's actions, while perhaps emotionally driven, appear to be a direct consequence of your own choices. You admit to the affair, you admit to the text messages. The prenuptial agreement is valid." It was a complete and utter defeat for her. Not only was she losing everything, but it was being publicly affirmed that it was her fault, her doing. I didn't feel joy at that moment. Just emptiness. A vast, cold emptiness that felt like the bottom of a well. The revenge was complete. Her life, as she knew it, was utterly decimated. But the feeling wasn't triumph. It was just the hollow echo of what used to be. The pain of the betrayal was still there, a phantom limb ache, even with the revenge complete. It was a reminder that even when you win, you still lose something irreplaceable. I took a deep breath. It was over. The marriage was dead, buried under a mountain of lies and deceit. And the woman I once loved, well, she was a stranger now. A stranger who had learned a very brutal lesson. And hey, before I continue, if you're finding yourself invested in this story, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and giving this video a like. Your support truly helps me create more content like this. Thanks. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Sarah moved out of the house, taking only her personal belongings. She had no job, nowhere to go immediately, and burned bridges with pretty much everyone she knew. I heard through the grapevine that she ended up moving back in with her parents in another state, a humiliating retreat for someone who had always prided herself on her independence and success. Javier, predictably, vanished the moment her life imploded. He wasn't interested in a woman without a career, a social standing, or money. Just another confirmation of her poor judgment and, frankly, her own superficiality. As for me, the immediate aftermath was strange. The furious energy that had fueled my revenge gradually dissipated, leaving behind a profound exhaustion. The house felt too big, too empty. The silence was deafening. I'd achieved my goal. Sarah's life was brutally dismantled, a mirror image of the way she'd torn mine apart. But the satisfaction was fleeting, tainted by the lingering bitterness of what had been lost. I spent a lot of time alone processing. The anger slowly faded, replaced by a deep sadness for the person I once was, and the dreams that would never materialize. It was a grief, not just for the marriage, but for the future I had envisioned. I started seeing a therapist, which was incredibly helpful. They helped me untangle the web of emotions, to separate the justified anger from the lingering pain, and to acknowledge that even though I had taken revenge, the wound of betrayal was real and needed healing. I wasn't the whiny bore she thought I was, but I wasn't entirely whole either. Not yet. The healing process has been slow, and it's ongoing. The house, once a monument to our shared life, now feels like a clean slate. I've redecorated, trying to erase the ghosts, to make it truly mine. I started focusing on myself again, picked up old hobbies I'd neglected, reconnected with friends I'd let slide, even started dating casually. It's weird, putting myself out there again at 38, after being off the market for so long. There are good days and bad days. Some days, the thought of trusting someone again feels impossible. Other days, I feel a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, I can find happiness again. I've learned a lot from this brutal experience. Firstly, trust your gut. Those red flags, they're there for a reason. Don't let love or denial blind you to obvious changes in behavior. Secondly, always protect yourself, legally and financially. It might feel unromantic, but a prenuptial agreement saved my ass. And thirdly, While revenge can feel satisfying in the moment, it doesn't truly heal the wound. It just balances the scales. The real healing comes from within, from acknowledging the pain, processing the anger, and ultimately, choosing to move forward, even when it feels impossible. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm harder, perhaps a little more cynical, but I'm also stronger, wiser, and fiercely protective of my own peace. Sarah's brutal betrayal nearly destroyed me, but in the end, it forged a new me. A man who won't be taken for granted again. If you're going through something similar, know that your feelings are valid. Don't let anyone, especially your betrayer, gaslight you into thinking otherwise. Seek help, protect yourself, and remember that you deserve better. It's a long road, but there is a path to healing, even from the most brutal betrayals. Good luck, Reddit. You've been a strange kind of comfort in my darkest hours.